Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about the 2024 US Senate races that are looking increasingly positive for the Democratic Party. Somehow, it looks like it is a possibility that the Democratic Party actually keeps control of the US Senate, which was not a conversation we were having just a few weeks ago. I mean, I've made multiple videos now about how the Senate majority is guaranteed for Republicans, how it is gone for Democrats. I made a whole video about Montana. Montana is currently held by a Democrat, and I made a video specifically about this race saying how the incumbent here, John Tester, that he's done, that he cannot possibly win. However, I've been proven wrong. Now, are they likely to to keep majority? No. But is Senate majority gone for them? No. And somehow a trifecta, a majority in the House, a majority in the Senate, and the presidency looks absolutely available for Democrats. It looks like it is still a possibility for them. So Democrats, after safe seats, are at 51 seats, and Republicans are at 47. So you could already see how Republicans have an upper hand in these Senate races, and this is just because of the map. That it's a simple fact. It's just because of the map that they're given. I mean, you of the battleground states, you have much more that are held by Democratic incumbents, Democratic senators, than Republican ones. There are only 7 or some like 10 or some Nevada, Arizona, Montana, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nebraska, and Texas. Those are really our core battlegrounds in this race. I mean, we can characterize New Mexico as likely, Virginia as likely, Florida as likely. So that leaves us with 9 seats that are really up for grabs. And in only 2 of them, Texas and Nebraska, are the Republican incumbents up for reelection. So, what this means is that Democrats have less opportunities to flip seats, especially than they did in 2022. Yes, 2022 was expected to be a red wave year, and Democrats did outperform big time, but they did have much better map in 2022 than they did in 2024. You had Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin as your core battlegrounds. So that's 6 states total. And in 3 of them, they were Republican. They were Republican held seats: Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. So in only half of the battleground states, they were split evenly. So Democrats and Republicans had equal opportunities to gain seats. Now, Democrats, in the end, they were the only ones who did. They were able to flip Pennsylvania. However, in 2024, again, as I just said, there are 9 core battlegrounds this time around, and only 2 of the 9 are held by Republicans. So, despite that, it is incredible to think that Democrats can actually still win majority. Now, West Virginia is already gone. West Virginia's Joe Manchin is retiring. That's an automatic flip for the Republicans. So, Democrats at a minimum are 50 seats. Now, you can have 50 seats until a majority if you are the party who has the presidency and the vice presidency. In the case of a tie, the VP casts the tie-breaking vote. So all Democrats need is 50 seats if they do, in fact, win the presidency, which I do have Harris and Walz winning. So they only need to get to 50. Now, I say only, however, that is an uphill task still. So you've got Wisconsin, first and foremost, you've got Wisconsin, you've got Michigan, and you've got Pennsylvania. These are all lean Democratic states. You know, the media likes to get obsessed with some of these races. Yes, polls show, tight races sometimes, but they did in 2022. The polls said that Dr. Oz would win in Pennsylvania right up until Election Day. And in the end, it wasn't even close. John Fetterman, the Democrat, won by 5%. Very similar case in Arizona, not to mention Republicans were expected to win big time in Nevada, but the Democrat hung on by a very narrow 0.78%. So these blue wall states are looking very good for Dems. I think that Baldwin and Casey, the incumbents, hang on in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, and a newcomer to the Senate, Alyssa Slotkin, does beat Mike Rogers in Michigan. Now, as we go forward, we do have some states that weren't on our radar for being non-competitive, that being Arizona and Nevada. You can just see here, for example, in Arizona, Republicans decided to run the worst candidate possible, Kari Lake, and they're absolutely getting trounced in the polls. The average is close because you have these 2 absolutely outrageous polls. Data Orbital, the founder of this company is like Kari Lake's, or the founder of this company's dad is like Kari Lake's campaign treasurer, something like that I saw. and Atlas Intel. But as you can see, +8 in a, of course, nonpartisan CNN poll. In a Trafalgar Group poll, which is a Republican-sponsored poll, Gallego is even ahead, but by 4%. But in the best pollsters like Mayor's College, this is an A+ rated pollster. Gallego ahead by 8. I think it will definitely be over a 5% margin in Arizona for sure. So that leaves us with Montana, Texas, Ohio, and the state you never hear about, Nebraska. Now in Ohio, I think that Sherrod Brown is narrowly favored to win. I think in Texas, you've got Ted Cruz still favored to win, and then that comes down to Montana and Nebraska. Now again, with these heavily Republican states, Montana voted for Trump in the last election by 16, Nebraska by 19. You'd think that we wouldn't have to talk about these two races. Now, Montana, you do have a Democratic incumbent, and as I was saying before, there was a time where it looked like he was done. However, John Tester appears to be making a sort of a comeback in this final stretch of the election. Now, is it enough to say that whatever it's tied or he is in fact winning the race? Absolutely not. Tim Sheehy is still favored to win by more than a percentage point, but by far less than the 5% margin or 6% margin I once had Tim Sheehy winning by. I once thought that Montana Senate would be a likely Republican state. Absolutely no longer think that. This is a very accurate pollster from the Montana State University that shows an even race, dead tied 43 to 43. Many undecided voters and 6% going to third parties. So that's important. And you've got Emerson College. Tim Sheehy up by 3, much closer than the +8, +7, +6% margins we were getting not too long ago, just a week or two ago. So yes, Tim Sheehy is favored, but Montana remains in the realm of possibility, where with a slight polling error, John Tester could win. That's gigantic. But let's say Tim Sheehy wins. It's gone, right? But no, somehow. Okay, this is going to sound crazy, but I don't know how familiar you are with the Nebraska Senate race, but there is an independent candidate running in Nebraska. He's running ads in the 3rd Congressional District, the extremely rural district, saying that he's more conservative and more pro-Trump than his Republican opponent, Deb Fischer. And he's running ads in the 2nd Congressional District, which is more Democratic, more liberal, that portrays him as a progressive union leader. So this is a guy who is not going to caucus with either party. That is for sure. He is more progressive economically, but he is running a much more, at least socially conservative campaign, just to win the election. This is really, I don't know if he's more conservative or more progressive or more liberal. This guy is right down the middle. He would not caucus with either side. So, Democratic majority, very unlikely. They would have to hold on to Montana. But what if Dan Osborne, the guy's name in Nebraska is Dan Osborne, what if he wins? Then Democrats are at 49, Republicans are at 50. Osborne is the one sole independent, actual independent, not just caucuses with the Dems. And nobody wins majority of the Senate if the presidency does in fact go to Harrison Walz to cast the tie-breaking vote. So that means that Senate majority comes down to Dan Osborne. So what if Dan Osborne wins? I didn't bring this up, but it is entirely in the realm of possibility. We have a new poll from the New York Times, or sponsored by the New York Times from Siena College. They show, this is an A+ rated pollster, by the way, the New York Times. They show Deb Fischer ahead by just 2% among likely voters in the Nebraska Senate race. 2 measly percentage points in a state Trump won by 19 points. Maybe even more shocking, among registered voters alone, not just likely voters, but registered voters, Osborne is ahead by 1 percentage point. Absolutely insane. We did get a new poll from YouGov that showed Fisher up by 7, but I'll tell you this, New York Times is a much better pollster than YouGov is, and as you can see, that new YouGov poll did boost Fisher's numbers significantly, but you can see it here, New York Times +2, and then among registered voters in the New York Times +1, but we've had a lot of internal polls from Fisher and Osborne. Look, Fisher's own internal polls had her up by only 7%. These are the polls that they're supposed to show donors to say, yes, we're winning. Yes, we'll get you what you want in Congress. Give me more money for my campaign. So to see the YouGov numbers matching that of Fisher's own internal polls, I don't buy it. I think that the race is a lot closer than 7 points. I think that Fisher only wins by about just 1%. So clearly, yes, independent candidates in red states, especially Kansas in 2014, they have come close in Senate races, but Osborne is different. Osborne, again, as I was saying, he's running ads to appeal. He's going to an extreme, saying that he's pro-Trump, basically saying that he's pro-Trump in the third district, in the rural third district, and saying that he's a progressive, economically progressive union leader in the second district. That is the kind of campaign that he's running. Very different from anything we have ever seen before. So if Osborne wins in Nebraska, we'll just keep that gray for the sake of the video. Dems at 49, Republicans are at 50. Nobody wins majority. So what that means is that the Senate, really, in most instances, comes down to who Osborne sides with. I think that when it comes to getting actual meaningful economic legislation through, right, infrastructure bills or whatever, Dan Osborne being he is a he's a labor union leader, right? When it comes to economics, maybe not social issues, but when it comes to economics, especially these progressive popular issues that are actually popular among the entire American public, despite Americans thinking that they're more conservative than they actually are, and therefore Osborne being able to run on that in the future, that is something. This meaningful economic legislation, right? Something like to the equivalent of a Build Back Better bill, like during the early years of the Biden administration, or early months, I should say. That is something that Osborne would vote for. That would give them 50 votes. And of course, Tim Walz would be the tie-breaking vote if they do win the presidency. And therefore, Democrats, just like that, have the majority on this, meaningful legislation like Build Back Better. Not to mention, you won't have the Joe Cinemas and Kirsten's. Wow, can't believe I just said that. The Joe Mansions and the Kirsten Cinemas of the world of Congress, who they were both retiring. So that is very positive for Democrats. They're more conservative Democrats, but they're out of there. They're retiring after this election, so you don't have to worry about them dissenting. So again, Democrats absolutely have a path to keep in control of the Senate. I mean, could you imagine if Osborne wins in Nebraska and then Democrats win in Montana? They have 50 seats. They don't even need Osborne. Republicans don't even have 50 seats. That would be absolutely stunning. I mean, then we could go into dream possibilities for Democrats. Texas goes blue as well. I think that is becoming more and more out of reach, though. Unfortunate for Democrats. But I just don't think, looking at the numbers that we have, I don't think that Colin Allred has enough in Texas to make this an upset. I really don't. You look at the polls, Cruz is ahead by a very narrow margin, 3.3%. But I will say this: if the polls are as off as they were in 2018, Colin Allred would be elected. But this is a presidential year; things are different, and I really doubt it. I think that it will be a very close race. But Ted Cruz is favored in Texas, and I'm becoming more and more confident on Ohio. I'm almost ready to move it into a lean characterization of the Republican nominee. Very weak candidate. I'm very confident in Dem's chances there. So thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe down below. We're trying to get to 15,000 subscribers before Election Day, which is now just 6 days away. Insane to think about. Again, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all later.